A very good afternoon, everybody, again. And this is the second part of looking at new criticism. Okay? So, in the first part, we have seen what is new criticism, textual analysis, verbal analysis of a poem. Poem is completely disconnected from any other connections, including author, and then the text is seen as an entity in itself. Entity in itself made up of words. Words have a meaning, and we have to just see or do the analysis of the words. That is how new criticism moves on. T.S. Eliot, we have seen that both the even Matthew Arnold and T.S. Eliot both are somewhere pioneer into looking at a new way of looking at criticism. That is new criticism. A few other critics that we want to see today are before we come down to talk about I.A. Richards. It was Jesse Ransom. It was Jesse Ransom whose work, the new criticism, which was published around 1941, which we can say is the in a way a prime time of new criticism, the pinnacle of this time, 1940s. At that time, this work, which gave this name also, or this tag, or this label, was attached to this entire movement, or something that all these people were doing randomly at separate places, not collectively sitting down to say to do something that as if that let us do new criticism and everybody joins hands in doing new criticism. So it was not like that, but various people, normally it began in American universities. So T.S. Eliot is and many of these people are professors of poetry. They are teaching poetry. So it also is a movement which started as a part of American criticism, or American and the European movement there. Russian also had the same kind of a thing known as formalism, Russian formalism, which was the form of the similar way study of the textual things. So 1940s, this work gives this name, Jesse Ransom here. The prominent writers in this, I.A. Richards, and his work Principles of Literary Criticism. Principles of Literary Criticism and Practical Criticism. Are some of the seminal works so far as new criticism is concerned. Very important works published in 1924 and 1929. So I.A. Richards remains one of the prominent champions of new critical movement here. With this works. Our essay, that is figurative language. Our essay in our syllabus is the figurative language, is a part of this work. Practical criticism is a part of this work. So from here, we will move on to see what he is telling here. Then, apart from this, there are other prominent writers whose ideas we will keep on taking are Cleanth, Brooks, Brooks, Language of Paradox. Yes, Language of Paradox by Cleanth Brooks. Alan Tate. Alan Tate is Tension in Poetry. So the concept of tension, the concept of paradox in the language. R.P. Warren. R.P. Warren's two works were the Understanding Poetry and similarly understanding fiction. This is some of the prominent figures. So very briefly we will see what are this paradox or tension things there which becomes important to study the language. From here later on the movement turned down into reader response criticism. Yes, reader response criticism from this, and there we have figures like Stanley Fish, Rolla Barthes, yes, that is where we get this concept of death of an author. Yes, death of an author. This concept we get with reader response criticism, wherein as we move in this direction, we obviously find or we come to that point that it means that everybody's reading is correct reading. Everybody who is reading will say that this is my meaning. The other will say it is my meaning, and you can't challenge. One can't say no, this is the only meaning, and everybody should see only this meaning. That is not possible. So reader response. Each and every reader also is the writer. So reading becomes a creative process. Reading becomes a creative process. So the work of art which is written by the writer is the half success. The other half depends upon the reader. So reading is not a passive activity, but reading is an active creative process which completes the work of art. So once the reader has read, analyzed and got some meaning, the work of art is complete. And in there is no way of telling that author wants to say so and so kind of a thing. So authorial intentions are not important now. That is why death of an author. Author is dead in that context. So, but we are not going into this, but this we can remember that when we do analysis, it is possible that people may have this variety of interpretations also of a given work of art. So, let us come before we come to our text and see this part, figurative language here. What Clint Brooks says here, that is language of a paradox. So, let us have a look at some of the slides here. Clint Brooks, language of paradox. So in the Well Wrought On, in 1947, in this book, there is this essay, The Language of Paradox. So Clint Brooks says that the language of poetry is language of paradox. So whatever language comes, there is a kind of an inbuilt paradox in that. And a kind of a conflict in that paradox is generating the meaning. So even if one person, when he says that the meaning of a word is like something like black, so the paradoxical white is always there, maybe visible or invisible. But irrespective of that, perhaps that meaning will not be created. So when we see Alan Tate, tension, then we can use that word that the tension comes from this paradox also. The tension in poetry comes also from this tension also. But we'll see that also right now. So in literature, the paradox is a literary device consisting of the anomalous juxtaposition of incongruous ideas for the sake of striking exposition or unexpected insight in different ways. We're talking about this word, yudh or buddh. This again is an example of paradox. So you want to strike something, some kind of unexpected thing you want to say, and so you use these words which are opposite into the work of art. So it may perhaps gives us a new insight to look at something, and that's why this paradoxical language is used there. It functions as a method of literary composition and analysis, which involves examining apparently contradictory statements and drawing conclusions, either to reconcile them or to explain their presence. So that is, it becomes a literary device wherein it is used for some kind of analysis or composition. You want to build something, construct something, and so you use paradox or contradiction deliberately into the poem. When some poems are given to you to read, or when you explore some more poems, and that will be your task to see, do you find paradox in that language or not? So some poems are very visibly paradoxical. Their very construction relies on a kind of a paradox, which is very visibly clear, very visibly clear. Sometimes it is implied. The paradox is implied in different contexts also. So this is what Cleanth Brooks says here, that when we read this or any interpretation, it all depends upon the tension at the surface of a verse, which leads to apparent contradictions or hypocrisies hidden into those things there. For example, we can see this, that a few days back I sent one poem, I think yesterday. Can you read that poem? My mobile is here. So. One poem, A Loco, Priyakant Parikh's poem. Do you remember? Yes, so okay, just a minute, yeah. So read that poem and let us see as an example of this. Yes.
એ લોકો પહેલા કાપડના ટાંકા ભરી રાખે છે, પછી જ્યારે માણસ ફાટી જાય છે ત્યારે વાર વેચે છે. એ લોકો પહેલા ધાન્યના કોથળા ભરી સીવી રાખે છે, પછી જ્યારે માણસ સડી જાય છે ત્યારે કિલો વેચે છે. એ લોકો પહેલા ઔષધની શીશીઓ સંઘરી રાખે છે અને માણસ જ્યારે ફૂટી જાય છે ત્યારે થોડી રેડે છે. એ લોકો છે જ નહીં, એ તો છે નોટોને ખાઈ ઉછળતી ઉધઈ. બીજું એને કંઈ ભાવતું નથી. મારે કવિ થવું જ છે. ભારે અસર કરનારી જંતુનાશક દવા ખાવ તોય બસ.
મારે કવિ થવું જ નથી. But one word can destroy the entire poem. Missing just one word. મારે કવિ નથી થવું, પણ મારે તો જંતુનાશક દવા થવું છે. પેલી ઉધઈ જે લાગી છે. Now see the paradox. Now if you see, read first line. Read the first line. It says, read the first line.
એ લોકો પહેલા કાપડના ટાંકા ભરી રાખે છે.
Then
પછી જ્યારે માણસ ફાટી જાય છે.
માણસ ફાટી જાય છે. Now see this. Now see, now you collect this word. One is ફાટી જવું. Then what is the another one coming there?
ત્યારે વાર
No, this ફાટી જવું. Then what is another? સડી જવું, ફૂટી જવું, સડી જવું. Then see, this is, you are linking these words. You are connecting these words. So first ફૂટી જવું, સડી જવું, then ફાટી જવું. Now see, these all words in a way are not for human, but paradoxically they are used. કાપડની જેમ, અથવા કાપડ અને મનુષ્ય સાવ જુદી વસ્તુ છે. માણસ કાપડની જેમ ક્યારેય ન ફાટે. So there is a paradox used here. Now this is not a direct paradox. Now in that way, કાપડ અને માણસ એ opposite પણ નથી, અથવા સીસી અને માણસ એ પણ opposite નથી. એટલે પેરેડોક્સ છતાં પણ એક implied paradox આમાં ઉભો કર્યો છે કવિએ. એમને એક paradox બનાવ્યો છે એમની અંદર. So in that point, Cleanth Brooks says that all poems are paradoxical. All language is paradoxical. It is the paradox wherein there is an inbuilt tension where the meaning is generated. So when we analyze any work of art, and when we want to see that how this paradox is playing a vital role, then we can analyze the language in that way. And when you write those things, if you find, then you can refer to Cleanth Brooks, and with the help of Cleanth Brooks observation, you can make your comment. That the way Cleanth Brooks says in language of paradox, that there is this, you are able to find in the analysis of this also. So even finding a paradox in the language of poetry is a new critical analysis. Yes, new critical analysis there also. Okay, so that point, one point about this, about new critical reading there. Obviously, he gave examples from various poems, Wordsworth's poem, Westminster Bridge. Uh, Now, because the paradox is very clearly or interestingly found in poems of metaphysical poets. In those poems, paradox is very visible because they would say that if A is equal to B, then this, then that. Okay? So it is like mathematics, where there is a paradox. You create a paradox. If this is this, then how? X square plus y square is equal to xy plus 2xy and this. Then you justify that. Now this is paradox. So mathematics has those paradoxes. And it is very calculative. Paradox is calculative because you have to think of it and then you have to write. Paradox cannot come spontaneously. Paradox may not come spontaneously. For that you have to think and ગોઠવણી કરવી પડે, વસ્તુને ગોઠવવા પડે. Then it comes there. So metaphysical poets were the poets who used to calculate and write everything. So it is easy to find a paradox in those works. But Clint Brooks says that even in the spontaneous writer like Wordsworth, you find paradox. So he gave example, one from metaphysical poetry, another from quite opposite to that, Wordsworth, romantic poetry also, and he tries to prove his point. Everywhere paradox is there. So here, obviously, this poem in metaphysical in different way, we keep on getting the word canonization, for example. Canonization, the word itself is used paradoxically here. Canonization means something about religion. Canonization means when somebody is turned into saint, or the process of sainthood, સંતત્વ જ્યારે કોઈને આપવામાં આવે તો એ પ્રક્રિયાને canonization કહેવાય છે. So કોઈને સંતત્વ આપવું, કોઈને સંત બનાવવા. Now here the poem is all about love. So where there is that santatva, the divinity, the religion, and where there is love, quite opposite. In Christianity, completely opposite, because in Christianity, as such, physical love is against religious dictum. So most of the religious people remain bachelor. They don't marry. They stay away from physical relations. So in that you use religious idea to talk about love. So very paradoxically used, he is doing that. So very first line, for God's sake, have you said this poem was in the syllabus? This was no. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. So the way it begins. So very first line is about love, as if a lover is telling to a beloved that don't speak for a while. Hold your tongue means we know. Hold your tongue means not this. Hold your tongue. You can't hold your tongue and speak anything. So it is not. But meaning is that. એ અર્થ એ પણ છે કે જીભ પકડો. જીભ પકડે એટલે પછી બોલવાનું બંધ થઈ જાય. So nobody can speak. એટલે એક સારું કોઈ બહુ બોલતું હોય તો કે જીભ પકડીને બેસો થોડી વાર. Hold your tongue for a while. So there is a literal meaning there. But obviously here it is not literal meaning. Here it is more of a, not the denotative but connotative reference is here. Connotative reference is also here. And let me love, that is what he wants to say. The very beginning is love. But later on he moves on to justify that my hand in your hand in my hand is almost similar to canonization. એટલે જ્યારે કોઈ પાદરી કોઈને સંતત્વ આપે ત્યારે એનો હાથ હાથમાં લે અને એ જે રીતે એમને સંત એ જ ફિલિંગ અહીંયા પણ છે. એટલે એ પ્રેમીઓને સંત સાથે ભેગા કરી દે છે એના કેલ્ક્યુલેશન્સમાં, મેથેમેટિકલ થિયોરમ સાબિત કરતા હોય એ રીતે. જેમ ફ્લીમાં કહે છે કે there is a blood inside flea's body, there is a blood, your blood, my blood, so blood has already mixed there. So that way it justifies here also. But very opposite ideas are used in paradoxical situations there. The same way here, this composed upon Westminster Bridge, this poem by Wordsworth, is very interesting, paradoxical, because when you think of a beautiful morning, when you think Wordsworth is writing about beautiful morning, then obviously we think it must be somewhere in Lake District, somewhere in nature. But remotely we don't think that it might be about a city life. It can never be a city. It will always be something nature where you are talking about beautiful morning. But if you are talking about city in the beautiful morning, then there is a paradox. So you are talking about beautiful morning, that is like something happens in the natural setting, but you are imposing that into the urban space also. So So that way the paradox is also found there. So he justifies that everywhere you may find paradox, just the matter that how you look into the language, into the situations which are found there. So that is one point. Very quickly we move on from this to the other points to see. So the first paradox, language, when we do verbal analysis, how do we find that becomes important. Okay? Second, Alan Tate, tension in poetry. So what Alan Tate wants to say here, that this tension, the word in context of Alan Tate, this is a balance maintained in an artistic work. In any artistic work, a kind of a balance that is maintained, that according to Alan Tate is tension in a work of art, and poetry or painting or musical composition can be included here. And what is this tension or balance between what? Between opposing forces or elements or any of those dynamic things which are quite opposite, and that balance how it is maintained there. In literature, the term has been variously used and defined. The poet and critic Alan Tate used it to refer to the elements that are necessary for a work to be considered whole and complete. The necessary element, so that the work becomes whole or complete. For that, whatever is required is this. This sense of tension was derived by Tate from two terms used in logic. Two terms used in logic, from where he is deriving this idea here, and that is the word tension, that is extension and intention. Extension and intention. Now, what is extension here in this term, from which the balance between extension and intention is the tension in poetry? Yes. So, what is extension is literal meaning. And intention is metaphorical. Metaphorical meaning. So, dropping this x and in, he came to the word tension. So, when there is a balance between the literal meaning and the metaphorical meaning, it becomes the perfect tension in the poetry, the language. So, it becomes very interesting to see in work of art that how this play between the metaphorical meaning and the literal meaning would play here. This would obviously become denotative meaning, and this will become connotative meaning. Okay? Denotative and connotative. So denotative means a dictionary meaning, what is exactly the meaning, the way it goes, and metaphorical means connotative meaning, which is not to be taken by what it means to. On face value, the meaning is not to be taken. So as normally people use the example in the class also, કે જેમ વિદ્યાર્થીને એમ કહેવામાં કે તમે બધા બહુ હોશિયાર છો, એટલે એમ લેવાનો ન હોય અર્થ, એના ફેસ વેલ્યુ ઉપર એ અર્થ લેવાનો ન હોય. તો દેટ ઇઝ વોટ ઇઝ ધ મિનિંગ. તો એની અંદર એક સાર્કેઝમ કદાચ સાર્કેઝમ છે. So that is the connotative meaning, that how. So what is the tension between this? That is what Alan Tate says. So when you make an analysis, another critic which you can use when you find a kind of a tension in this poetry, you can use this also. And from this we try to look at I.A. Richards, what I.A. Richards wants to justify or wants to say in this essay here. I. Richards will speak in terms of, for example, about 4 kinds of meaning first. Four kinds of meaning, 2 uses of language, and kinds of misunderstandings. Yeah. Figurative language. Yes. What kinds of misunderstandings we may have for understanding figurative language here. Okay? By the word figurative, also we know it very well. These figures are not digits, yeah? Because figures also means digits. Somebody say that write your roll number in figures. Then how we write, or digits, and figurative means figures of speech. So we understand that word very clearly in the context of literature classroom, what we mean by there. So this what he says. Now let us very quickly say what are these 4 kinds of meaning that he is giving, what name he is giving to these things. So, according to I. Richards, words carry 4 kinds of meaning, and to be more precise, the total meaning of a word depends upon 4 factors. That is sense, feeling, tone, and intention. Yes? Sense, feeling, tone, and intention. These are 4 factors or 4 kinds of meaning on which the overall meaning of a poem or a work of art depends there. Sense and feeling are interconnected with each other. The same way tone and intention are also connected. So whatever sense you want to give, it will get connected with the feeling. And whatever tone is used, it will go with the intention of the poet also. What is sense? Sense is what is said or what items referred to by a writer. Now here we can again say that sense is something like intention, which is a literal meaning, extension in terms of Ellen Tate, which is more of a denotative meaning. So what exactly you want to say? So whatever you write, you directly say that only. Very clearly you want to say that line. For example, in Gujarati, people are using કે રાત પડી ગઈ છે, તો understand, ચલો અંધારો થઈ ગયું છે. That is what you want to say. That is the things are there. પણ તમે કોઈ બીજા સંદર્ભમાં એમ કરો કે કોઈ એના કોઈના જીવનમાં હવે રાત થઈ ગઈ છે તો કોઈનું મૃત્યુ થઈ ગયું છે. The another sense that will be more of a metaphorical use of the language in that context also. So sense is what exactly you want to say, that primary meaning that comes there. Feeling refers to emotions or emotional attitudes, will, desire, pleasure, displeasure, or whatever things that are connected with those things. When we say something, we have a feeling about it. Whenever we say something, there is always a kind of a feeling also about it, which we tend to be very objective when we say about the thing, but we can never be so objective, because always some kind of a feeling will always get connected with whatever we say or however we express it. From our likes and dislikes to hidden prejudices and biases also gets reflected in those things there. So attitude towards it, some special direction, bias or accentuation of interest towards it, some personal flavor and coloring of feeling, everything gets connected in the second part here. Words express these feelings, these nuances of interest. All these nuances get connected into the words also, or the selection of word or the choice of the word that is made everywhere. All this thing gets connected there. So when we open that, we are looking at this. So sense and feeling, these 2 things there. The another 2 things are tone and intention. Tone is writer's attitude to his readers and audience, and the use of language is determined by the writer's recognition of his relation to his readers. Now this is like a relation means you don't never know who is going to read your work, whether it will be children or grown up. You don't know that relation in that terms. So you write a poem for a grown up people, but that poem is selected in school textbook. Then the school children will read, but you never imagine the school kids will study your poem. So you cannot imagine as such the audience. But what we mean by this, or what I.A. Richards mean by this, is that whether he wants to see that the audience is also satirized in the work of art, or the audience is appreciated in the work of art. Is there any such kind of a relation that he is trying to express through this work of art or not? Or is he leading the audience also to look into something in such a way where they also satirize it, or they also like it, or dislike it, or hate it, or love it? That is the relation that defines the relation between the speaker and the listener, or the writer and the reader here. And intention is the aim of the writer, which may be conscious or unconscious, which may be conscious or even unconscious also, because this unconscious will lead us to death of an author. So when a reader will say that your intention is this, the author, if alive, says that, well, that was not my intention, but then that is the unconscious intention. Still that will remain the meaning because the words are there. So that is why the word unconscious also important here. It refers to the effect that he tries to produce. This purpose modifies the expression, it controls the emphasis, shapes the arrangement, or draws attention to something of importance also here. So this is four kinds of meaning which would define some kinds of propositions in various capacity also: sense, feeling, tone, and intention. In this separate essay, I. Richards also said, gave an example. For example, he says that anybody writing a kind of a science treatise, science book, science article, their intention is just to convey the message that this is the research and that is what they want to do. Now, their intention is not to enrage any kind of emotions. It is only to pass the message. So scientific writing is just to pass the message that is there. So that is also the intention of the writing, and that will get connected with the emotion. So there, what is the emotion? Dullness is the emotion. Dullness means you are not supposed to emotionally react to scientific observations. So if people say that when you mix this gas and that gas, it becomes of a red color or a green color, well, it becomes of red or green color. And now you don't have to see red as somebody's love or green as somebody's religion. You are not supposed to see any of those things. This is what happens there. So when you see green in different terms or red in different, there are emotions also connected. But in scientific writing, that is what it happens. So it comes there, but you are not supposed to see that. But that also is an emotion. That not having that emotion also is an emotion. That should not be forgotten. That when you do not react to any of those things in this form of emotion, that is religious sentiment or the sentiments of love, but whatever kind of a dullness or boredom remains there, that also is the emotion there. That should not be forgotten. So this way, four kinds of things that we can see, which also you can use when you try to analyze a poem. I. Richards, four kinds of meaning: sense, feeling, tone, intention also. Then when he says two uses of language, in that he says there is, let me just make a point here. Two uses of language. There is emotive use of language and there is scientific use of language. Yes, emotive use of language and scientific use of language. So emotive use of language obviously will be metaphorical use, and the purpose of that also will be to arouse some kind of emotional reaction of the audience in one or the other ways, whereas scientific will be only a factual use of language. Factual, it will be more of a denotative use of language, where you are not supposed to mean any other things from that language. You just have to mean what it really means to say, nothing else. What language is written and what it wants to say, only that meaning when you take, then it is called scientific use of a language. And this is very important to understand, because when we will see misunderstanding of the language, many of the misunderstanding of the poetic language, that is figurative language, comes from reading the poetry's language scientifically. When people do scientific reading of the poem, there are more chances that they may misinterpret the meaning of the language. So again, when we'll see example, we will see, for example, in one of the poems, he will be writing a poem about a cloud, and the question which will be raised in that context will be that the poet wants to show that the cloud is flying and there is a shadow of a cloud on meadows. On the meadows, there is a shadow of a cloud there. So poet imagines that cloud is penciling down on the meadows, penciling the shadow. એ ક્લાઉડ પોતાને પડછાયો દોરતું જાય છે, એવી કલ્પના એમણે કરી. So when you do scientific reading of this line, then you will question that clouds do not have hands, so they cannot hold a pencil. So very first line you will tell that, well, this is stupidity. A cloud can never hold a pencil, so cloud can never pencil. So you have to, what you have to do? You have to go to emotive use of language. This misunderstanding happens because you are doing scientific reading of the language. What is written, it should be that, but in figurative language, it is never so. It is always something else that is connected with that also. So this it says, and then we come to this kinds of misunderstanding, which I. Richards tells in this. Okay, so you can put here, bring here.
So these are available on website?
Hi, yeah, it's on the material website also. This entire material is there. We are taking from the material which is already available on this website also. So 4 types of misunderstanding, he says. Misunderstanding of the sense of poetry, the very sense that comes from 4 kinds of meaning, sense. So that if it is not clear, then entire reading will be problematic. That is careless and intuitive reading also will lead to that, or rhyme or irregular syntax also are there. Now careless or intuitive reading, so very quickly if we have read the poem, then perhaps the entire sense is not grabbed by us, and so what we will understand will be faulty understanding of the meaning of the language in poetry. Then over literal reading, that is prosaic reading or scientific reading. When we gave an example that if somebody is holding this pencil in the hand, you question that cloud cannot hold a pencil in the hand. So then there is a problem there. So that is called over literal reading of language of poetry. You have to be very liberal in reading language of poetry. You have to allow lots of freedom. Now see, normally with us, like, because we know we are in language classroom, literature classroom, we study literature, we are well aware about this thing. So we may not be surprised that this kinds of reading may also happen also, or how the people who are completely disconnected from literature classroom, in what way they might read the language that we do not have an exposure to. So when I. Richards is giving these poems to students and then is asking them what is your reading, variety of readings are coming, and they all genuinely say that, well, I have a problem with this poem. This poem tries to say, like the example I gave you of holding a pencil in the hand, and somebody questioned that, well, how can cloud hold a pencil in the hand? This is stupidity. This can never happen. And if the cloud, you say, that is going on a meadows, from meadows it goes on a village, and then it is circling around the village, and then again comes down to meadows, and it is startling some of the cattle which are grazing there. Cattle ને જ્યારે ડરાવતું હોય એવું ક્લાઉડ કરે છે. But just imagine that કદાચ એ હવાની લહેરખી બદલી ગઈ હોત અને બીજી દિશામાં ગયું હોત, તો શું ક્લાઉડ પોતાની ઈચ્છાથી ક્યાંય જઈ શકે? જઈ જ ન શકે. ક્લાઉડ તો કમ્પ્લીટલી બ્રીઝ દ્વારા ડ્રીવન છે. then what? Then cloud do not have any kind of personality at all. So that question also was raised. So how do you justify that? If somebody is asking such a question, then how do you answer that? That what is the problem there? What kind of misunderstanding is that? That is what I. Richards is doing. So he gives us a very interesting way of analyzing a poem. All readings are correct, but how do you justify all those readings? How do you tell that, well, this is there? And then you say that in literature, there is an element of personification. So in that, all inanimate things are personified, and so you give them human habits or human way of doing things, human way of thinking, everything you do. So when you think, okay, personification is something, and personification is what is used by poets very widely, and so all inanimate objects will do something that humans do. But that gap is necessary. That is to be explained, that there is something like personification. So you enter into figures of speech and you said that, well, there is figures of speech like personification, and so you allow, under that you are allowing everybody to do whatever they want to do, or to use a completely unscientific language also, completely something that is not at all possible, that also you allow the poets to do. So when Wordsworth says that butterfly is the historian of my childhood, butterfly is the historian of my child. So people will say, where is butterfly, where is historian, and where is your childhood? How these things are connected? So you would say that, well, when I see butterfly, I remember my childhood. So all butterflies have in a way captured my childhood. So the memory of butterfly, or whenever I see butterfly, I remember that we used to play, or the childhood come. That way it is historian of that. So not at all possible that butterfly can be a historian, because historians are academicians. They write things, they go for evidences. Butterfly never goes for those kinds of things. How? So that question we raise, and then you try to answer that it is very far-fetched comparison, but this way he tries to justify that. So over literal reading happens. In our case, over literal reading will not happen, but we'll have to deliberately do that. We have to deliberately do that as a part of our analysis. Okay, imagine if you are doing a kind of this denotative reading or scientific reading of a language, then what meaning is possible? And then you make a gap and say that, well, that way if I read, the poem has no meaning at all. I have to read this poem in this way only, this figurative language. That analysis is something that will be necessary to be done. એટલે બીજી રીતે જોઈએ તો આપણે જાતે જ પેટ ચોળીને શું ઊભું કરવાનું છે? આપણને આમ કઈ તકલીફ લાગતી જ નથી કે આ બરાબર છે, આમાં શું વાંધો છે? તો આપણે વાંધો ઊભો કરવાનો છે. We have to question the language, and then we have to justify the language. Then we have to solve that query here. Defective scholarship or inappropriate metaphor. Now these are the problem with poet also. Sometimes poet is not good enough, scholarship means not a good one to use metaphors in a proper way, and so this may be a problem with a poet also, or inappropriate metaphors, not aware that which metaphor should go with what, then also this may happen. No proper use of metaphor. If people are not aware about semantic fields and they use wide semantic fields into something, then those semantic fields may not match with each other. And if they do not match with each other, they will not generate any meaning at all. એનો મિનિંગ જ જનરેટ નહીં થાય જો એ મેટાફર્સ એક સાથે ભેગા નહીં થાય તો. એટલે કે વોટર વર્લ્ડના મેટાફર્સ હોય, એક અગ્નિના મેટાફર્સ હોય, એક વાયુના મેટાફર્સ હોય, તો એ બધાને ભેગા થઈને કુદરતનું કાવ્ય સર્જાતું હોય. તો એને કઈ રીતે તમે ભેગા કરો છો? એ બધા મેટાફરને એ મિક્સ મેટાફર પણ ઉપયોગ કરી શકાય. તો ક્યાં સુધી, કઈ હદ સુધી કવિ એ બધાનો ઉપયોગ કરે, અને બહુ મિક્સ મેટાફરનો ઉપયોગ કરે અને પોયમ તૂટી જાય તો, અથવા અર્થ તૂટી જાય તો દર વખતે વાંક વાચકનો જ નથી હોતો, ક્યારેક એ વાંક કવિનો પણ હોઈ શકે. Difference in meaning of words in poetry and prose, that is where this also comes there. So how when we read prose there is a difference meaning, and how we read poetry, gadya padya, both has a different language to be used in different way also. This all things in a way also you will study as a part of your study of Indian poetics also. In Indian poetics also, the same way you will try to analyze this thing. This time you have not studied Indian poetics. So so you will not be expected to write or use the vocabulary of Indian poetics into your writing. This time it will not be expected. Uh, but you can refer, like in Indian poetics you will study about dhvani, about alankar, about auchitya, about different layers of meaning, where you will also see that there are this way that the words are defined, that there is abhida, vyanjana, lakshana. These are the vocabulary of Sanskrit poetics. And when you see abhida, abhida means કોઈ પણ શબ્દનો સિદ્ધો જ અર્થ લેવાનો, એટલે જેને આપણે અહીંયા સાયન્ટિફિક યુઝ ઓફ લેંગ્વેજ કહીએ અથવા જેને ડિનોટેટિવ અર્થ કહીએ, એ અભિધા છે. Whatever is said, sense of the poem, whatever is directly said is the meaning of the word. That વ્યંજના એટલે સીધો અર્થ હોય પણ લેવાનો એ નહીં. વ્યંજના એટલે સીધો અર્થ હોય એનો, પણ એ અર્થ લેવાનો નહીં, ત્યાં બીજો કંઈક અર્થ છે એ જોવાનું, જેને આપણે ઇમોટિવ યુઝ ઓફ લેંગ્વેજ કહીએ, અથવા ઇમોશન કે ઇન્ટેન્શન શું છે એ સાથે જોડાયેલા બાબતો હોય એ અર્થ જોવાનો. સીધો અર્થ દેખાય તો પણ એ લેવાનો નથી. અને લક્ષણા, સીધો અર્થ કદાચ એમાં હોય જ નહીં, સીધો અર્થ લેવા જઈએ તો એ અર્થ જ ન હોય, એવી બાબતો બને અને એનો કંઈક બીજો જ અર્થ તમારે લેવો પડે, બહુ ફાર ફેચ વાત થઈ જતી હોય. તો અભિધા, અભિધા, વ્યંજના, લક્ષણા. અભિધા means straight word, denotative literal meaning. Vyanjana, there may be a direct meaning also, but you are not supposed to take that meaning. You have to take another meaning of that. And lakshana means perhaps you may never find a straight meaning of that word. સીધો અર્થ જ ન હોય એવી બાબત. Now, for example, if I say trust God, if I say the word trust God, now this is a straight away meaning. અભિધા જેવું છે. Trust God એટલે એ જ કહેવાય, બીજું કાંઈ છુપાયેલું છે નહીં. ભગવાનમાં વિશ્વાસ રાખો, આસ્થા રાખો. Trust God, that is straight away the meaning. There is no possibility of this or other thing there. If I say this example I gave you, that અંધારું થઈ ગયું છે, અંધારું થઈ ગયું, તો એનો સીધો અર્થ શું થાય કે રાત પડી ગઈ છે, પણ એ નથી લેવાનો. અહીંયા શું અર્થ લેવાનો છે કે કોઈનું મૃત્યુ થયું છે, અંધારું થઈ ગયું છે. જે કોન્ટેક્સ્ટમાં આવે એ કોન્ટેક્સ્ટમાં એ શબ્દ એ રીતે ઉપયોગ થયો હોય કે આના જીવનમાં હવે અંધારું થઈ ગયું, એનો સંદર્ભ એ જ હોય કે કોઈનું મૃત્યુ થવાથી થયું. એટલે કોઈનું મૃત્યુ થયું હોય ને કોઈની વાત કરતા હોય કે આના જીવનમાં તો સાવ અંધારું થઈ ગયું, તો પછી બહાર જોવાનું નથી, ખરેખર અંધારું થયું, આપણે કે ના ના અંધારું હજી નથી, હજી તો પ્રકાશ છે. તો આપણા જીવનમાં એના જીવનમાં હશે જ નહીં, એ પણ પૃથ્વી ઉપર જ રહે છે, એવો અર્થ કરીએ તો એ નથી. ત્યાં એ અર્થ લેવાનો નથી સીધો, એટલે ત્યાં અભિધા નથી લેવાનું, પણ ત્યાં વ્યંજના લેવાનું છે. વ્યંજના એટલે ત્યાં બારી બાર જોવા જવાનું નથી કે અંધારું થયું છે કે નહીં. અને ત્રીજું કે ધીસ એક્ઝામ્પલ કે પેલું પોયમ એક છે, બિલાડીએ પહેરી સાડી, એ જે આવે તો હવે એ ક્યારેય બને જ નહીં, ક્યારે બિલાડી ક્યારેય સાડી પહેરવાની જ નથી, એ પોયમમાં છે તો એ બહુ ફાર ફેચડ છે. એ આખું લક્ષણા છે ભાષાનું. એટલે એમાં તમે આપણે જઈએ કે આ ક્લાઉડે કેમ પેન્સિલ પકડી હશે, ક્લાઉડ પાસે તો હાથ જ નથી, એ કઈ રીતે પેન્સિલ કરી શકે, અથવા બિલાડી કેમ સાડી પહેરે, એ લક્ષણા. એટલે એમાં સીધો અર્થ જ ન હોય, એમાં કંઈક બીજું જ ગોતવું પડે. એટલે ઓવરઓલ એની સેન્સ, એની ફિલિંગ, એના ઇમોશન્સ, ઇન્ટેન્શન્સ જોઈએ ત્યારે અર્થ સમજાય કે ઠીક. અથવા પેલું કે ચલો કીડીબાઈની જાનમાં, આપણે આવા કેટલા બધા પેલા ગીતો છે, નવરાત્રીના ગીતો કે કીડીબાઈની જાન, એટલે ક્યારેક એમ થાય કે આ કીડીબાઈની જાન, આ કેવી વસ્તુ, કારણ કે ત્યાં લક્ષણાનો ઉપયોગ થયો છે. અને એ પ્રશ્ન જે છે કે કીડીબાઈની જાન જ ન હોય, that is over literal reading. That's why that question is coming. There is prosaic reading there also. So this vocabulary of Indian poetics. Now, because right now you have not studied, it will not be expected કે તમે લખો તો આ ન લખો, પણ જો લેક્ચર લેવાઈ જાય પછી તમે લખો તો you use this also, this vocabulary. Last time we had done this, so we were asking students to use the vocabulary of Indian poetics along with new criticism. Along with this, mix up both the things and write with that. And that is what you can do even in your answers also. Because in this paper, the 4 units, 2 units are of Indian poetics, 2 of Western poetics. So when you do new criticism and that reading, Obviously, you can use the vocabulary of Indian poetics also when you explain your answers and other things also are there. So, reading of literature or poem in variety of ways, much deeper way you find also from Indian poetics. And very interestingly, there are lots of alankar and lot many things are there which you will obviously learn as a part of Indian poetics also. So this is these are the things which you have to we have to see in this part. So very quickly, Clint Brooks paradox in the language. Okay. Paradox very quickly. Yeah, it is fine. Okay. Yeah. Paradox, then Alan Tate, tension in poetry, intention, extension, a variety of meanings. I. Richards, four kinds of meaning, two uses of language, and kinds of misunderstanding. And all this thing collectively bringing together, we have to do analysis of poetry, various kinds of poems, and we have to use this language for analysis of those things that we do there. One example we want to see, one example that we want to see today is about this poem, Solemn and Grey. This poem, three poems I think are there in this material. So now our activity is this, that let us read this poem and see what meaning we are getting. And how do we get that meaning of this poem? So no title, nothing is given. These are just the beginning words. Beginning words are there. No poet. Which time, nothing is important. Just a poem is there. And we have to read, and we want to see that what is the overall sense, meaning, and how do we come to that meaning? Which words are telling us that this may be the possible meaning of this poem? Yes, can you read the poem? Even in the online material also you can open and see, if you want to, or here also. It's a small poem. Okay? So what is the meaning of the poem? Yes, beginning lines, are they giving you any sort of understanding? Solemn and grey. You can also note down that for what kind of words you need to refer to dictionary. Which words you can understand, which words you cannot understand. Is it necessary for you to refer to dictionary for which word? Is dictionary helping you in uncovering? That all is a part of analysis. So when you sometimes see the word in a dictionary, and then you may get the word which you thought might not be the word, and that helped you in understanding the poem. So that also should be noted down. Solomon Gray, the immense clouds of even pass on their towering, unperturbed way through the vast whiteness of the rain-swept heaven, the moving pageants of the waning day, heavy with dreams, desires, prognostications, brooding with sullen and titanic crests, they surge, whose mantles wise imaginations trail where earth's mute and languorous body rests. While below, the hawthorns smile like milk splashed down from noon's blue pitcher over mead and hill. The erased distance is so dim with flowers, it seems itself some colored cloud made still. Oh, how the clouds this dying daylight crown with the tremendous triumph of tall towers. So this is the poem. So, what feeling you get, what meaning you get, what emotion also you get when you read that. Is there any first emotional reaction, first impressions of this poem? Like it is a poem about happiness or unhappiness or any of this kind of emotions. It is about whatever way we look at emotions or emotional reactions to that. Yes.
One observation I got that is that first the poet is talking about the clouds, and now he gradually moves to the people who are roaming the planet or Earth. And
Gradually moving to the people.
yeah, moving people or Earth. First the clouds, now people, and at last he once again jumps to the clouds by natural beauty.
Okay. So, like for example, cloud is fine. We can see the cloud word, but people, from where you get the word people? Pageants. Huh? Okay. So the word moving pageants. What is pageants? Is to do anything with people?
Pageantry for its form, something we can
Yes.
say form and procession.
Procession. Huh? Pageants means a procession.
Yeah, and perhaps the desire word is used, that is why people are having desire.
Okay, the word desire or prognostications that gives a kind of a human element that there might be people there. We're talking about people. That way you have to question whether whatever you see, what meaning, where are the words that you find about people there. Earth is there, cloud is there. So it starts with cloud, goes to earth, and then again to cloud. So that is trajectory. Yes. Okay. Yes. Then. So you can say it is a nature poem. Yes. Clouds and the things are there. Flower is there. Hill is there. Mead is there. Earth is there. Waning day. Waning day means evening time. Yes. Evening time. Rain. So that all will say that there are lots of natural things. It is a kind of a nature poem. So, what does it reflect or what it tries to tell? Visual imagery also helps. Visual imagery, when you visualize. So, when you visualize first line, solemn and grey, the immense clouds of even pass on their towering, unperturbed way through the vast whiteness of rain swept heaven. The moving pageant of waning day. So this gives a visual image. What kind of visual image does it give? I think I have put it on my blog also from the link. Are you able to open the blog? From the material website. No, it is not. The image is not put here. Okay. Here it is. Okay. In the slides, it is put there. This is a kind of an image that it's the beginning lines trying to say that there are so many clouds, they are moving on. So many clouds are moving on. Solemn and grey, immense clouds of even past, as if like a towering kind of a thing that is going on. A huge mass of the cloud. And what kind of thing? It is a rain swept heaven. So there is a kind of a whiteness of this cloud, which is like a rain-swept heaven. And it means that these clouds in this image are still a little bit black. Yes? But this rain-swept whiteness means જે વાદળો વરસી ચૂક્યા હોય એ કયા પ્રકારના હોય છે વાદળો. કાળા ડિબાંગ વાદળો એવો શબ્દનો પ્રયોગ થાય ત્યારે વાદળો પાણીથી ભરેલા છે, ખૂબ વરસવાના બાકી છે. પણ જે વાદળોમાં એ કાળાશ ઓછી થઈ ગઈ હોય, પછી થોડા સફેદ થઈ ગયા હોય, તો એ વાદળો જે છે એ વરસી ચૂકેલા વાદળો છે. તો એ કલ્પના છે. So rain swept heaven, moving pageants, like making a big show of something. It is moving, and it is of a waning day. So athamta divas. So that image is getting clear in the beginning part. કે આ રીતે વરસાદ વરસીને પછી ઘણા બધા વાદળો આમ જઈ રહ્યા છે, ક્યાંક જઈ રહ્યા છે. અને એ બધામાં એક ઇમોશન કયા પ્રકારનો છે? સોલેમ એન્ડ ગ્રે. Solemn. Solemn means dignified, serious, something very serious, something dignified. Yes, that kind of that solemnity or that dignity or that seriousness is there when these clouds are moving. So that is, we can say, a human emotion given to the clouds. So when you see the clouds going on, you feel like when you visualize this image, you also visualize the white bearded Bhishma Pitama, long white bearded Bhishma Pitama. So what is a kind of a brood on his face, the solemnity, the gray, that is what gets reflected. So the cloud gets that emotion. So you find something elderly, something dignified, something very serious, kind of an emotional attachment with that beginning part of this poem that we see here. Then this, when they are going, these clouds are heavy with dreams, desires, prognostications. Now again, this I think you have to see in dictionary. What is this? Prognostication means some kind of prophetic way of looking at something. Prognostication. So you are looking into something and you have some kinds of prophecy of something. And then brooding. Deep thoughts. Yes. Chinta ma rokaila hoy e rite. Brooding with sullen and titanic crest. Sullen એટલે ફરી પાછું દીર્ઘગંભીર. Sullen, but titanic crests. Which? Titanic. No, with capital T when it comes. Movie Titanic also comes in the mind, but we don't know whether this poem was written after Titanic or before Titanic. So if it is before Titanic, then yes, Titans. Means they are the gods, Titans. They are the pantheon of gods, Greek gods. There, Titans are dead. So that is that. That's why that idea about something like God, that is a Christian God, is like the imagery of what we see, this Bhishma Pitama. When we see this kind of an image. Not the Jesus Christ, because Christ was much younger. But this image also, this image also white bearded, that sullenness, that image helps us to visualize, or this image also, the Christian God having this image, or this also. So that helps to get that point, what we want to see in the sullenness of this. So that is the point of Titanic. Titanic, that kind of the feeling that it gets there. They surge. So this is how they are going, with dreams, with desires, with prognostications, brooding. એટલે વાદળો જઈ રહ્યા છે, પણ લાગે છે કે એ કઈ થોડી કોઈ ચિંતામાં હોય, કોઈ ભવિષ્યની વાત હોય એને ચિંતા કરતી હોય, કોઈ જાતના ડ્રીમ્સ કે ડિઝાયર્સ પણ હજી બાકી રહી ગયા હોય, એ રીતે એ જઈ રહ્યા છે એ વાદળો, એ રીતે. અને વેનિંગ ડે એટલે કદાચ દિવસ પૂરો થવા આવ્યો છે હવે, અથવા now if you personify that totally, then some human being who is in the old age, અને કેટલા બધા જીવનની ઈચ્છાઓ અધૂરી પણ રહી ગઈ હોય, ડ્રીમ્સ, ડિઝાયર્સ, and then you are looking કે કેટલું જીવા કેટલું ન જીવા. એ ઇમોશનમાંથી કદાચ આ કાવ્ય લખાયું, જેનું રૂપક છે વાદળો, જતા વરસીને ચૂકેલા વાદળો હવે એ જઈ રહ્યા છે. They surge whose mentals wise imaginations trail where. Now this becomes little bit difficult lines. અહીંયા સુધી બહુ વાંધો નથી આવતો, પણ અહીંયા કે હવે એ સર્જ, they are going, આમ ઉડીને જઈ રહ્યા છે, પણ એ જ્યારે જઈ રહ્યા છે ત્યારે એમનું જે મેન્ટલ, what is this mental?
Perhaps a big part of something or marching.
Mental, still anybody can?
Dismantle we have.
Yes,
We have the dismantle. Means to
dismantle. Yeah.
The part of the earth between the surface and the center.
Yes, but again, not getting exactly here. Mental means sleeveless clock. Sleeveless clock. Clock means moto jabbo. घड़ियाल नहीं. Sleeveless clock, CLOAK, loose sleeveless clock, એટલે બાયો વગરનો મોટો જબ્બો. So can you visualize that? Yes. This image, so that you can see that image also. We are getting modern dress, but obviously this is not very modern. This images that we get here is for a proper imagination, we have to visualize some of the old movies where we find this. It is something like this. Or something like this, but again still it is very trailing. એ પાછળ પણ બહુ ફેલાયેલો હોય, જેમ રાજા મહારાજાઓએ ઉપર કપડું પહેર્યું હોય ને નીચે પાછળ લટકતો આવતું હોય, that is that idea, that એટલે એ પાછળ ઉડતું જતું હોય, એટલે કોઈ ફિલ્મ કે સિરિયલમાં આપણે કોઈ પરીને ઉડતી જોઈએ તો પાછળ મોટો દુપટ્ટો ઉડતો આવતો હોય, that is that imagery that is coming here. So mental, okay, mental's wise imagination. હવે આ mental જે કપડું છે પહેરેલું, any kalpnao which becomes problematic, that clothes cannot imagine. Scientific reading will give us the objection that how can mental have wise imaginations? Cloth cannot have this. Trail, a trail થાય છે પાછળ, અને ક્યાં સુધી trail થાય છે? Where Earth's mute and languorous body rest. Where Earth's mute and languorous body rests. We can say maybe this is Kabristan, where it rests, languorous body, a tired body. Ultimate rest is the graveyard. So in that way, so it goes up till that graveyard kind of an imagery that comes here. And then while, so this is one part, so upper part, and then there is a switch over in this poem here. Up till here, it was like you are down, you are looking up, and you are seeing this cloud moving on, and the trail of the cloud is going far off to the last corner of the earth. That is, you are visualizing there, and then there is this emotion also. With that visual, there is an emotion of sullenness, of brooding, of some kinds of dreams and desires, completed, incomplete. That kind of prognostications is also there. These are all emotions connected with that. Now we see suddenly from top down. હવે કેમેરા એંગલ બદલાય છે, પેલા નીચેથી ઉપર જોતા, હવે ઉપરથી નીચે તરફ. While below, પણ નીચે એટલે અચાનક તમે ઉપર ચાલી લાગ્યા છો. While below, the hawthorns smile like milk splashed down from noon's blue pitcher over mead and hill. Now for this again you will have to take lots of help of some other source to understand these lines. So hawthorn, when we Google or when we try to see the meaning, then we find hawthorns are shrubs. Hawthorn also is a surname also. Hawthorn also is a surname. Nathaniel Hawthorne, who is a writer of A Scarlet Letter, kind of American novel also. So Hawthorn, but it is with capital H also, which may lead towards that, but it is not so. It is about shrubs. But then it is shrubs which are, the lines would say that the shrubs looks like, they smile. Hawthorns smile like, there is simile, milk splashed down. Milk splashed down, એટલે દૂધ ઢોળાઈ ગયું હોય એ રીતે સ્માઇલ કરે છે. Now this is very difficult to understand. દૂધ ઢોળાઈ જાય ત્યારે સ્માઇલ કોણ કરે? Nobody would smile when the milk will splash. So it is smiling, Hawthorne smile like milk splashed down. So this imagery is very difficult to comprehend. Very difficult. How this is there? પછી કઈ રીતે મિલ્ક ક્યાંથી ઢોળાઈ ગયું છે? From noon's blue pitcher over mead and hill. જેમ કે જાણે નૂનના બ્લુ પિક્ચરમાંથી એ ઢોળાઈ ગયું હોય મીડ ઉપર, મીડોઝ ઉપર, hill ઉપર, એ રીતે એ આવે છે. So a very challenging imagery to comprehend there in this. So first we solve that hawthorns are shrubs, and then again it doesn't solve the problem of milk, which has a kind of a whiteness. Shrubs will give us greenness. Mead will give green color. Milk is white color. So how these colors will combine with each other? So when we Google it out, and then we find this imagery in this form, that this hawthorns are like this, and they have this white color flowers. Once in a season they have white color flowers, and when they have this, when you look from the top, it looks like this is like a splashed milk. એવું લાગે ઉપરથી કે આ સફેદ જે દેખાય છે જાણે દૂધ કોઈએ ઢોળી નાખ્યું હોય એવું દ્રશ્ય ઉપરથી દેખાય છે. When you see from the top, what is this whiteness? Whiteness is some kind of flower that grow on hawthorns. અને ત્યારે એમ લાગે કે આ hawthorn એ રીતે સ્માઇલ કરે છે અને જાણે દૂધ ઢોળાયેલું હોય એવું દ્રશ્ય ઉપરથી દેખાય છે. ગ્રીન મીડોઝમાં hill ઉપર that we can see. But along with that, there is another imagery. There is Noon's blue picture. Noon's blue picture. Picture એટલે આપણને ખ્યાલ આવી જાય કે પિક્ચર તો ડિક્શનરી મદદ કરે. કુંજો જે હોય એને પિક્ચર કહેવામાં આવે. પાણીનો કુંજો અથવા this and it gives કે કોઈ પનીહારી પાણી ભરવા જતી હોય તો એ મીડોઝ ઉપરથી જતી હોય એવું કોઈ રમણીય દ્રશ્ય પણ યાદ આવે. લોકો આવા દ્રશ્યો ઘણા બનાવતા હોય વોલ ઉપર મૂકવા માટે. કોઈ ડેઝર્ટમાં કોઈ પનીહારી પાણી લેવા ઘડો લઈને જતી હોય, આપણે જે કુંજો લઈને ન જતી હોય પણ ઘડો લઈને જતી હોય. બટ વી કેન કનેક્ટ દેટ કે એ રીતે એના પાણી છલકાઈ જતું હોય ને ઢોળાઈ જતું હોય ને એ પાણીને બદલે દૂધની કલ્પના કરો તો એ that we can see. And then there is this word noon, which obviously may tell that noon means afternoon. Afternoon ને personify કર્યું હશે અને એમના પિક્ચરમાંથી આ વસ્તુ કંઈક ઢોળાઈ રહી છે એવી કલ્પના કરી હશે, કારણ કે આખી પોયમ નેચરની પોયમ છે એટલે ઇટ મસ્ટ બી અબાઉટ this that Noon's blue picture, from Noon's blue picture માંથી જેમ સ્પ્લેશ થઈ ચૂક્યું છે મિલ્ક એવું દ્રશ્ય ઉપરથી દેખાય છે એ લાગે. But then when we look, છતાં પણ એમ થાય કે એ અર્થ સાચો હશે કે કંઈક આપણે હજી જોઈએ તો. So when you Google or when you try to still see more, you find that this blue picture is actually a painting drawn by Susan Noon. એ સુઝન નૂનની પેઇન્ટિંગ છે એનો સંદર્ભ અહીં કવિતામાં લીધો. એટલે there is intertextuality. There is a kind of intertextuality. One art form or other art form is used in the another art form. So in modern or postmodern writing there is lots of intertextuality. They use these references of other work of art or other poems also there. So this Noon is not afternoon, but that is surname. Hawthorn we thought is a surname, is not a surname. It is a shrub. And Noon, which seems to be afternoon, is not afternoon. It is the last name of Susan Noon. And there might be a famous painting. There is a blue picture. And what is splashing out? Some flowers are splashing out of this picture. That is the painting. So like splashed out from Noon's blue picture, જેણે આ પેઇન્ટિંગ જોયું એને ગોઠવાઈ જાય બધું મનમાં કે આ કઈ કલ્પના કવિ કરી રહ્યો છે, કયા સિમિલીનો ઉપયોગ કરે છે અહીંયા. એ રૂપક એના મનમાં બેસી જાય બરાબર કે you are seeing this there. But well, many might not have seen this. So then for them to connect is very difficult. To connect with this is these are difficulties in understanding the language of poetry also. In understanding the language of poetry or to comprehending entire poem, there are many kinds of difficulties which may lead to the kind of misunderstanding of understanding that also. So that is this blue picture, that reference comes here, which is one of the most difficult part of this poem, these lines. Then we say the erased distance is so dim with flowers. In I.A. Richards' discussion, he has raised a question to this also, that this dim with flowers is not a proper comparison or appropriate way of looking, because flowers are not dim. Flowers when you will use when there is something kind of a brightness, at that time you use flowers. Normally people don't use flowers for something that is dim or dull. You might have some other things to speak about dimness or dullness. So dim with flower is somewhere the metaphors are mixed, perhaps not appropriately by poet also. Dim with flowers is a kind of a difficult thing to comprehend. Distance is so dim with flowers, it seems itself some colored cloud made still. So all this Hawthorne and other thing, that it looks like somebody has colored the entire thing, that way it is looking. Then last concluding line, so it is looking down to up, then looking from top to down, and then concluding line, oh how the clouds this dying daylight crown, how these clouds are crowning this dying daylight. એટલે આ દિવસ જે આથમી રહ્યો છે એ આથમતી સાંજ, એ સાંજને કેવું સરસ મજાનું ક્રાઉનિંગ કર્યું છે, એક સરસ મજાની ક્રાઉનિંગ ગ્લોરી જેમ આપી હોય એ રીતે ક્લાઉડે એ સાંજને બહુ એકદમ નયનરમ્ય સુંદર બનાવી દીધી છે. This dying daylight crown with the tremendous triumph of tall towers. Just like as if there are tall towers, these clouds are like tall towers, and as if it is a triumph of tall towers. જીતીને આવેલા કોઈ મોટા tall towers હોય એવી એક અનુભૂતિ એ વાદળો આપી રહ્યા છે કે જાણે કોઈ જીત હાંસિલ કરી અને કોઈ આવેલા હોય એવી એક ફિલિંગ સાથે એ દ્રશ્ય પૂરું થાય છે. I. Richards also objected to this also, like tall towers and going for a triumph is problematic because towers cannot walk, towers cannot go anywhere to fight. They are static. There is scientific reading of those things, which so triumph of tall towers is unimaginable or scientifically looking not possible also in this context here. But he says that, well, if in the total emotion of the poem, the overall emotion of the poem, if everything is suiting well, even if it is awkward, even if it is out of context, even if somewhere dim flowers or tall towers moving on to triumph is not matching well, or the mental having imagination that also is a wise imagination is not suitable well or going well with something that is naturally true also, or can never happen, then also if overall emotion of the poem is going on well, then everything can be pardoned. Then you can pardon the poet that this is fine. So what is the overall emotion that we can see? We can see that this is an evening time, and in the evening time when the clouds are moving on, it gives a beautiful image of a waning day, and the poet is perhaps giving an emotion of old age or somebody who is near death, but still with some kind of dreams, desires left, but still happy with whatever has happened. Something is left out, prognostication and those things there, but still he is not wailing to live more. He is happy at the end of the day that maybe I have lived my life quite well. That emotion might have given rise to this poem, where the poet is using evening as a metaphor. Evening as a metaphor for death or near death kind of a thing. Is using clouds which are rain-swept cloud. Rain-swept cloud as an imagery of an old man, old person, old age. So you can't say that this must be a death of some young person. That cannot happen because there is this imagery of oldness that is connected with the cloud and other thing. The old man is brooding, is thinking about something, some dreams, desires, completed, not completed, but still it seems like he is happy with the dying daylight. He is still happy. So that is the last emotion is of triumph. આપણે જીવન જીવા તો એમ લાગ્યું કે જીતીને જીવા છે, બહુ વસવસો કઈ બહુ રહ્યો નથી, જેટલું જીવાય એટલું મન ભરીને જીવી લીધું છે, આ પ્રકારની લાગણીમાંથી આ પોયમ ઊભી થઈ હોય તેવું લાગે છે. એ આપણે કહી શકીએ. From the imageries that are given there, some imageries are problematic, some are very difficult to comprehend, some there are mixed metaphors which are tough to comprehend, but overall effect માં બધા જો એમનો રંગ પૂરતા હોય તો એ કાવ્યને માફી આપી શકાય, તો એ કાવ્યમાં પ્રોબ્લેમ ન ઉઠાવ. That is what I. Richards writes when he analyzes this poem there. Okay? So you raise questions also, and then you try to answer those questions, and then try to see that what is overall emotion where it happens there. So then you will find analysis here. Critics found following problems with the poem. Cloud cannot have desires, mental cannot have imaginations, imaginations cannot trail, milk do not smile, dim with flower is a weak things, tall towers triumph is not comprehensible. So these are objections which you can find, but these objections are over literal reading, because of over literal reading of a poem. So this comes when you do analysis, you will have to do this also. You will have to do deliberate over literal reading also and problematize the poem. What you have to do? You have to problematize the poem also, and then you have to solve the poem. And the way this is, so I. Richards writes that this complaints rest upon assumption that language, which is very fatal to poetry. એટલે આ રીતે તમે જો આ ભાષાને વાંચો તો પોએટ્રી મરી જ જાય. આ રીતે ભાષા વાંચો તો કાવ્ય ક્યારેય જીવતું ન રહે. એટલે કાવ્યમાં ફિગરેટિવ લેંગ્વેજ હોય, એને એ રીતે ન વાંચી શકાય, એને બહુ જુદી રીતે વાંચવું પડે, એટલે જુદી રીત, એટલે so he says metaphors and other things are to be read. So poetry is different from prose and needs a different attitude for right understanding. So that is how you justify from this also. So that is one. Now very quickly, we are not going to do complete analysis of this poem and that third one there, but you have to read and see how the analysis is done of this poem. Now in this poem, there is a health, a ringing health. Very quick reading you can do to see if what meaning we get. A health, a ringing health unto the King of all our hearts today. But what proud song should follow on the thought? No do him wrong. So a health, a ringing health unto the King of all our hearts today. But what proud song should follow on the thought? No do him wrong. Unless the sea were harp, each mirthful string woven of the lightning of the nights of spring, and dawn the lonely listener glad and grave with colors of the seashell and the wave, in brightening eye and cheek there is none to sing. There is none to sing. Drink to him as man upon an alpine peak, brim one immortal cup of crimson wine, and into it drop one pure cold crust of snow, then hold it up too rapturously to speak, and drink to the mountains, line on glittering line, surging away into sunset glow. So this is the another poem. So first, પેલું આમાં ક્યાં ઇમોશન ભરાયેલો છે આ પોયમમાં, એવો કયો ઉમળકો હતો કે એમાં આ કાવ્ય સર્જન થયું, એટલે કઈ કઈ ફિલિંગ એ સ્પોન્ટેનિટી આપી, that and then we try to see કે કયા શબ્દો આપણને એ તરફ લઈ જાય છે, what are they trying to do that. Yes, can you try, can you see what is that? What is that emotion that perhaps might have given rise to this? Occasion, emotion? Well, this also is very important, no? That when you see, well, it is all numb, you can't understand anything. Yeah. That also is to be noted down. When you write analysis, you have to be honest with what is your first reaction. The first reaction is completely blank. આમાં કાંઈ ટપો જ ન પડ્યો, આમાં ક્યાં કોણ શું રમે છે કાંઈ એક ગતાગમત નથી પડતી. પછી બીજું વાંચ્યું તો થોડું પકડાણું, ત્રીજું વાંચ્યું તો થોડું વધુ પકડાણું. તો એ કેટલા બધા રીડિંગ્સ કરવા પડે. This is that new criticism, that you do verbal analysis and try to reach to the meaning there. You will find it much easier when you do with Gujarati poems or Hindi poems. There you will find it much easy to understand than with the English poems. Or maybe there are Indian English poems, then still it is easy to comprehend. But if it is coming from another culture, then it is difficult to get, because we do not leave these metaphors. That is what this presentation was made for, where that point was to be proved, that when we deal with literature which is coming from a remote land, because English literature, we do not have a cultural connection, we don't have religious connection, we don't have geographical connection. એટલે કોઈ બાવળની વાત કરવી તો તરત મનમાં થાય કે બાવળ એટલે શું, સબરી ને એના બોર બોલે તોય સમજાઈ જાય, પણ આ હોથોન ન સમજાય. It takes time. એટલે કોઈ આપણે ત્યાં જાણીતું પેઇન્ટિંગની વાત કરવી તો we can capture that. But this, it is very difficult. So this has this cultural anonymity, social code of conduct is different, which you will see here also. જેમ અહીંયા વાઇન ની વાત આવી તો આપણા કલ્ચરલ કોડ ઓફ કન્ડક્ટમાં વાઇન બહુ જુદી વસ્તુ છે, આપણે એને દારૂડિયા કહીએ, નશાખોર કહીએ, બહુ ખરાબ માણસો છે એમ કહીએ. તો આમાં તો વાઇન કંઈક જુદી રીતે આવ્યું કે એ રીતે જ આવ્યું ખબર નહીં, એ તો આપણે ખોલીએ ત્યારે ખબર પડે પોયમ કે એ કઈ રીતે એનો ઉપયોગ કરેલો છે in this. So that is social code of conduct is quite different. Religious inconspicuousness, Mythical aloofness also is there. Difference in shared collective unconscious also. Our collective unconscious and the Western is very different also. Geographical remoteness, historical distance. Because of this, English literature is not easy to understand because of all these reasons. If it is from India, from Gujarat, it is very easy to understand also. So we can understand well for, if you study Gujarati literature, you can have an altogether different feeling in understanding because it is from our region only, only. But if it is from aloof, then there is more problem to see, and we have to make use of technology a lot. We referred to this point when we were talking about Macbeth also. કે આપણે સ્કોટલેન્ડ જોવા ગયા હતા, આપણે હવાઈ મુસાફરી કરીને સ્કોટલેન્ડમાં ઉતરા અને ત્યાં એનો ગઢ ને બધું જોયું. ત્યારે આપણે વાત કરી હતી કે કોઈ રા નવઘણની વાત કરતા હોય, જુનાગઢનો રા નવઘણ, એનો ઉપરકોટ જોવા જવો હોય તો આપણે સવારે જઈને સાંજે જોઈને આવતા રહીએ, કઈ વાર ન લાગે એનો ગઢ જોવા જતા, સાહિત્ય ભણતા હોય તો. પણ મેકબેથના ગઢની વાત હોય તો આપણે ન જઈ શકાય, આપણે એમાં તો ટેકનોલોજીનો જ ઉપયોગ કરવો પડે. એટલે ગુજરાતી કે રિજનલ લિટરેચરના ટીચર કે સ્ટુડન્ટને ટેકનોલોજી બહુ મહત્વની ન લાગે ક્લાસમાં. એમ લાગે કે ટેકનોલોજીની શું જરૂર છે ક્લાસમાં, પણ આપણે જરૂર પડે. આપણે હોથોન સમજવા હોય તોય જરૂર પડે. આપણે નૂન્સ બ્લુ પિક્ચર જોવું હોય તો ખૂબ જ સર્ચિંગ કરવું પડે ગૂગલમાં, અને ઇટ ટેક્સ ટાઈમ, ઘણો બધો સમય પણ લાગે. પણ બરાબર પાછળ પડીએ તો હાથમાં આવે, બહુ પાછળ પડવું પડે, સતત ડાઉટ રાખીને, શંકા રાખીને, એમ નહીં કે ના બસ સમજાઈ ગયું હવે બધું. With a kind of a streak of doubt, then you get something. So why technology required in literature classroom? These are the reasons. If it is local, everywhere local, religiously, mythically, then maybe not very much required also. Yes, so yes, anything you get from this? This poem might be about what? Is it about some king, like celebrating the health of the king, or to celebrate the health of the king that somebody is making a song?
Nature, sea, then sunset, then mountains.
Yeah, nature is there, so it is for nature, or nature is used as a metaphor to speak about somebody, or is it only about nature? Will anybody write ever only about nature? If somebody is writing about daffodils, it is only for daffodils, or only for butterfly, or only for skylark, or nightingale. It won't be. They will use all these things as vehicles. They are used as vehicles to convey something else. So poets use natural objects as vehicles. So and then they want to say. So Keats' odes also you might have studied. Keats' odes where lots of things are used, natural things. So are they just celebrating the nature, or they are using nature as a vehicle?
It is for somebody. He is celebrating. Author is celebrating because that is proud and hard, and also it is about person. I guess because it is saying in brightening eye and cheek. So it is something joyful. He is celebrating that. What proud song of Allah. I can conclude it by the second line. It is for somebody.
Okay, so for somebody, yes?
To celebrate.
To celebrate, now, yes. Okay, so somebody, what is celebrated?
Birthday.
Birthday?
Wine.
Wine and other things are there. Yes?
Something that achievement because alpine peak that means mountain. It presents mountain and it's the top of the earth or top of the height. It presents the height.
Okay, so alpine peak speaks about some high achievements of somebody. That is how you connect, but you require still many more words to see that. Yes, anybody else would like to tell? So so you say that it is celebration of something, be it birthday or some achievement. Is that okay? Or still whether it is celebration or not, that also is a problem. So can we narrow down to something and then we can move whether it is this or that. So that is about the prominent emotion which is there, and then the other things are coming here. The other things are these metaphors. Then we see that what is problem with metaphors, they are appropriate or not. So this very idea that health, ringing health, and this drink to him, this is about celebrating birthday or the good health of somebody, and you drink for that person. So that is called toast. Like people said, cheers. Cheers for them, drink for the good health of somebody. That is that feeling that comes here. Drink to him here, this there. So who is this him? When we see who is this him who is being seen here. So it is about a friend, and that the friend comes here is like the king of all our hearts. That is a reference to a friend, king of all our hearts. That is not the king of land. King of land is the Raja. King of heart is a friend. So a health, a ringing health for this. That is celebrating the birthday of a friend, or let us say there is no reference of birthday. So let us keep it aside, but celebrating some kind of an achievement of a friend or a good health of a friend. That is what the poem tries to say. Keep it open. Let us keep that open. That, but it is celebrating a friend, something that comes from here, and says that when you want to celebrate your friend, what can be a good song? क्या प्रकारનું ગીત એ સારું ગીત બની શકે? What proud song should follow? જે એને લાયક હોય, આપણા મિત્રને લાયક હોય એવું. તો કે એ તો ત્યારે જ બને કે જ્યારે સમુદ્ર હાર્પ બને. સમુદ્ર હાર્પ. So this harp, અને એને comparison કર્યું છે સમુદ્ર સાથે. So we have to see, this is harp. આ જે વાજિંત્ર છે એ હાર્પ છે. એટલે હાર્પમાં એક વાસ્ટનેસ છે જેને સમુદ્ર સાથે સરખાવે. સમુદ્રમાં પણ વાસ્ટનેસ હોય. So when you compare the metaphors that this is like this, કંઈક સામ્ય હોવું જોઈએ. યા તો એ વાજિંત્ર નાનું હોય પણ અવાજ સમુદ્રના મોજા જેવો કરતો હોવું જોઈએ તો એ બંધ બેસે, અથવા એના લુકમાં વાસ્ટનેસ હોવી જોઈએ. નહીતર એ સી કે સમુદ્ર સાથે કેમ મેચ થાય? This harp. So he says harp. This is King David. King David એ harp વગાડે છે. ડેવિડ આપણે એબ્સોલમ એન્ડ એકિટોફેલમાં ભણ્યા હતા. એ ડેવિડ is here. So this imagery, he says, જો સમુદ્ર હાર્પ બને અને each mirthful string, જેની string છે હાર્પની, હવે string woven of the lightning of the nights, વીજળીઓ જે છે એ એમના તાર બને. વીજળીઓ, સમુદ્ર હાર્પ બને અને વીજળીઓ એના તાર બને. અને નાઇટ્સ ઓફ ધ સ્પ્રિંગ એન્ડ ડોન એટલે પરોઢ એકલું એકલું એ સાંભળતું હોય, એકલું એ સાંભળતું હોય. એ જ્યારે ઘટના બને તો એ જે ગીત બને એ આપણા મિત્ર માટેનું બને. આવી એમણે કલ્પના કરી છે. એટલે આને ઉમળકો બહુ છે. એ ઉમળકામાં અતિશયોક્તિ બહુ થઈ ગઈ છે. આ ઉમળકામાં અતિશયોક્તિ એટલે કવિ, એટલે એમાં એનાલિસિસમાં આવે કે આ બધું બહુ એને થોડુંક આમ છટકી ગયું હોય ને કમ્પેરિઝન કરવા માંડ્યા છે. કવિ થોડા આપાની બહાર વયા ગયા છે આમાં. એટલે એમણે જે બધા મેટાફર વાપરા છે એ પ્રોબ્લેમેટિક છે બહુ. So say that we'll see harp bane, that is problematic imagery. Strings, lightning, any strings bane, and that also is woven. Now strings are not woven in harp, they are strung. They are strung. Woven એટલે પેલું ભરતકામ, weaving કરવું. પણ એ weaving નથી થતું. એટલે આ woven શબ્દ જ ખોટો છે. આ સાચો શબ્દ નથી ત્યાં. ત્યાં એ strung હોવું જોઈએ. કે તારને બાંધેલા હોય. If you see guitar, then you pull the string and you strung the, you don't weave the You don't view the strings there. So that is એટલે આ જે પેલા ઉમળકામાં થયેલી ભૂલો છે, જે કવિના ભાગે થતી ભૂલ છે. આ કવિના દ્વારા જે આપણે મિસઅન્ડરસ્ટેન્ડિંગ જોયું, એમાં ત્રીજો મુદ્દો હતો કે કવિથી પણ મેટાફર્સ કે શબ્દના ચયનમાં ભૂલ થાય, અને આવી ભૂલ આ કવિ ઉમળકામાં કરી ચૂક્યા છે, થઈ ગઈ છે નથી. વિવન લાઇટનિંગ ઓફ ધ નાઇટ્સ ઓફ સ્પ્રિંગ, પછી એ કઈ રાત્રિની લાઇટનિંગ એને તાર તરીકે ઉપયોગ કરવો છે? સ્પ્રિંગની રાત્રિઓ. સ્પ્રિંગમાં પાછા બહુ લાઇટનિંગ થતું ન હોય, સ્પ્રિંગના સમયમાં બહુ લાઇટનિંગ ન થતું હોય, જે એ લાઇટનિંગ એઝ વી નો કે એકદમ વરસાદી વાતાવરણ હોય ત્યારે થતું હોય છે. સો દેટ સ્પ્રિંગની નાઇટનું લાઇટનિંગ, અને પાછું જ્યારે એ રાત્રિ છે ત્યારે પાછું ડોન સાંભળે છે. તો આ બે ઘટના સાથે કેમ બને? રાત્રિ પણ છે અને પરોઢ પણ છે. પરોઢ હોય તો રાત્રિ ન હોય, તો રાત્રિની તમારે તાર લેવા છે વીજળીના, અને પાછું સાંભળે છે એકલું બેઠું બેઠું પરોઢ, તો આ તો કુદરતી રીતે જ શક્ય ન બને. એટલે જે એને ઉમળકો છે એમાં અતિશયોક્તિ થઈ ગઈ છે કવિ દ્વારા. એમાં આ પ્રકારના બહુ ફાર ફેચ્ડ ઇમેજરીઝ મુકાઈ ગયા છે, વિચ આર પ્રોબ્લેમેટિક or faulty also, problematic or faulty also here. So that is what he says, that glad and grave with colors of seashell and the wave in brightening eye and cheek there is none. આ થાય, એને જે ગીત સર્જન થાય એ જ ગીત આપણા મિત્ર માટે લાયક છે, બાકી બધા ગીત ઓછા પડે એવી વાત. પછી કીધું કે ડ્રિંક ટુ હિમ. ડ્રિંક ટુ હિમ એટલે ચીયર્સ વાળી, આપણે ચા પીએ એટલે ટીયર્સ કરીએ આપણે, એ લોકો ચીયર્સ કરે. સો ધીસ ડ્રિંક ટુ હિમ. અને ક્યાં ડ્રિંક? તો કે અલ્પાઇન ના પીક ઉપર, એલ્પ્સ માઉન્ટેન રેન્જ છે હિમાલયા જેવી, તો એની ટોચ ઉપર પીક ઉપર આપણે બેઠા હોઈએ, અને ઇમોર્ટલ કપ ઓફ ક્રિમ્સન વાઇન, ક્રિમ્સન મરૂન કલર, રેડ મરૂન કલર નો વાઇન નો કપ ભરેલો હોય, અને એમાં પછી ડ્રોપ વન પ્યોર કોલ્ડ ક્રસ્ટ ઓફ સ્નો, એટલે એ જે ટોચ ઉપર બરફ પડ્યું હોય એનો સ્નો સીધો લઈ, પેલું ફ્રીજમાં ક્યુબિકલ્સ બન્યા હોય તે નહીં, એકદમ કુદરતની ટોચ ઉપર રહેલો બરફ એ તમે એમાં નાખો. ઇન ધેટ ક્રિમ્સન કપ ઓફ વાઇન, પ્યોર કોલ્ડ ક્રસ્ટ ઓફ સ્નો યુ પુટ ધેર, then hold it up too rapturously to speak and then drink this. એટલે આવી ખુશી છે ને કે આ રીતે આપણે એ મનાવીએ ઉત્સવ. એટલે જન્મદિવસ ઉપર જ લખાયેલી પોયમ છે, પણ એ જન્મદિવસનો ઉલ્લેખ સીધો નથી, એટલે આપણે એને ઓપ્શન આપીએ કે જન્મદિવસ હોય, અચીવમેન્ટ હોય, or other things also we can see there. અને સનસેટ ગ્લો, એ સનસેટ થતો હોય but we are sitting there and we are drinking for the good health of our friend. એવી એક પોયમનો આ છે. એટલે ઓવરઓલ ઇમોશન એનો એક બહુ હાઈ ઇમોશન છે. ઇટ ઇઝ a kind of sentiments which are very high sentiments. So in the analysis when all these questions are raised, આ બધા પ્રશ્નો જ્યારે ઊભા થાય છે આ પોયમને વાંચવામાં, which I.A. Richards is discussing, that what are these problems. So the image is bad, the sea may have sound like an organ but never had a sound of a harp. આ જે ઇમેજ છે સી અને હાર્પની એ બરાબર છે જ નહીં જરાય, એ ઇમેજ. And many other problems, far-fetched metaphor. Sea is pictured as harp, each string beside being mirthful is made up of lightning or spring, and then we don't know why dawn is listening there. So poem's true character in the word woven, but since the strings are spun or twisted, they are not woven, so that also is problematic. Common sense suggests that if dawn were present, the lightning of spring nights would be inevitably absent. So that is what it says. So dawn cannot come until the night is ended. So that also are the problems which are raised here. And then I.A. Richards is also justifying this. These are the problems which are raised from this poem. And then I.A. Richards is justifying that even with all this thing also, still this is a poem and is to be read as a poem. And it has a figurative use of language. So first you see what is overall emotion. Overall emotion is about this high sentiment, powerful, high, spontaneous sentiment for a friend. And so in that, એટલે એ ઉમળકામાં અતિશયોક્તિ થઈ ગઈ છે, તો કદાચ એને એ રીતે જોઈએ કે ઉમળકો અતિશયોક્તિને લાયક છે. એટલે એ અતિશયોક્તિને પણ માફ કરી દેવામાં આવે. Then also it can be pardoned, even if that is done in that point also. Then these objections which are raised, that this dawn and other things are present and it cannot be together. We know that on the earth simultaneously everything exists. So if it is evening time here, somewhere it is a morning time, somewhere it is midnight also. So on the earth everything exists all together. પૃથ્વી ઉપર તો સવાર બપોર સાંજ બધું સાથે થાય જ છે. ક્યાંક સવાર હોય ત્યારે ક્યાંક રાત્રિ હોય છે, ક્યાંક બપોર હોય ત્યારે મધ્યરાત્રિ હોય છે, ક્યાંક સાંજ હોય છે. તો ઇટ ઇઝ સાયમલ્ટેનિયસલી ધેર. એટલે એમ માનવું કે આ બે સાથે એક્ઝિસ્ટ ન કરે એ ખોટી વાત છે. કુદરત. યસ,
Can we say that 4 o'clock is for somebody it is morning or somebody is sleeping?
morning also, this evening also, yes, and the time also on the earth also is wide apart. So it is, you can't say it is not possible. It is very much possible. Also you just have to widen the scope of your looking. You have to just go a little bit higher in the sky to see that how everything exists simultaneously together also. So that way the poet is still pardoned, and I.R. Richards still say that this also is a proper poem. Still, because it has a figurative use of language and emotion and sense and other thing. So that happens there. So that way he analyzes. This analysis is very important to be studied. All this analysis that comes at the end of this. Number 1, number 2 points where he analyzes everything. In favor of poetry. Analysis is given in favor of poetry. First you object to the poetry, and then you justify all the objections here. And the final poem is this Climb Cloud, which we were talking about. This pencil, all the blue, miraculous stockade, and those things are there. And in this poem there is another objection, and that is about comparison also. So some critics have said that P.B. Shelley's West Wind is having a better character than this cloud. The West Wind, Shelley's poem, and that West Wind in that poem is having a more better character than whatever the wind is doing, is more convincing than what the cloud is doing in this poem. So there is this problem of comparison that comes. So that also is solved, that when we compare the poem, because this idea also comes from touchstone method by Matthew Arnold. So the limitations of touchstone method also, and then comparison also, one has to be careful that in which context P.B. Shelley is writing that poem and what is the context of these things, and then people study that nightingale here and butterfly there, or the Grecian urn here and some other object there, and how people are doing with those things. So there are problems of comparing the things very widely apart, and that also may not give a proper justice to the reading of a poem. So those comparisons can be faulty, and maybe perhaps we may not reach to the right conclusion also when we do such a kind of a comparison. That also he is discussing in this part also here. So these are the poems and the analysis which are done by I.R. Richards as a part of reading this figurative language in the poem. And now we want to practically do this in various poems. So one choice, you can pick up your poem. I will share some of the poems with you, so you can select the poem. If I will get enough time, I will give poems according to your roll number. So whichever poem is given, you read. Try to do some rough analysis of the poem in the same line, using all this Clint Brooks, Alan Tate, and I.R. Richards and their ideas, even T.S. Eliot or Matthew Arnold also you can pick up, and we will see how we read those things there. So that we will do on Monday, various poems there. Okay, so with that we end our class here.